The first thing I remember is the laugh. Not the place, not the uniforms, not even my own name being said wrong, just that laugh, sharp and careless, bouncing off hard floors like it belonged there. It happened at an airport in the Midwest early morning, the kind of hour where everyone's half awake and just trying to get through security without trouble. I was 19, traveling alone. Hoodie, backpack, headphones hanging around my neck. Mind already 3 steps ahead, thinking about the tech summit I was flying to. I handed over my ID and the officer looked at it, looked at me, then laughed and said, "No way, this is you." That was the hook, whether he knew it or not. That was the moment my quiet day turned into something else entirely. At first, I thought he was joking. You know how people sometimes test, you see if you'll laugh along, make yourself smaller, so they feel bigger. I gave a polite smile and said, "Yeah, it's me." He didn't hand it back. He held it up, tilted it toward the line behind me like it was a prop, and said louder, "You sure?" People started looking. You can feel that shift when attention lands on you without your permission. My stomach tightened, but I stayed calm. Staying calm had always been my thing. I grew up learning that raising your voice only gave other people an excuse to ignore your words. He asked where I was going. I said Seattle. He raised an eyebrow slow and exaggerated like he was tasting a joke. "By yourself?" he asked. "For a conference," I said. He snorted. Not even subtle. "Conference, huh?" Doing what I told him. Cybersecurity, student track. The smile on his face wasn't friendly anymore. It was the kind of smile that says I've already decided who you are and now I'm just entertaining myself. This officer, his badge said Darren Holt, had that energy of someone who loved the smallest amount of power a little too much. He took his time flipping my ID over, tapping it with his finger, asking questions that weren't really questions. People behind me were sighing, shifting, checking their watches. I could feel heat creeping up my neck. Not anger, yet more like that old familiar embarrassment, the kind you swallow and hope passes. Then he said it. "This looks fake," he announced. Not quietly, not professionally, just loud enough. That's when I knew it wasn't about procedure. It was about control. He stepped closer, told me to move aside, said they needed to check something. He took my bag, my phone pointed to a glass-walled room just off the checkpoint. Secondary screening. Everyone knows what that looks like. Everyone knows how it feels to be sent there while strangers pretend not to stare. I asked why. He said, "Because I said so." Simple as that. Inside that room, time stretches. The noise outside turns dull, like you're underwater. I sat on a plastic chair and watched the clock on the wall. Boarding in 32 minutes. Plenty of time, I told myself. Plenty of time if someone actually does their job. Holt leaned against the counter outside, chatting with another officer, laughing, glancing at me every now and then like I was a paused video he could unpause whenever he felt like it. I knocked on the glass once gently. He ignored me, knocked again. He finally looked over and said, "Relax. You'll get there when you get there." That's when the internal shift happened. Fear drained out, replaced by something colder. I've always thought clearly under pressure. It's not bravery, it's habit. I started running through options. I knew my rights. I knew how long they could hold me without cause. I knew I had one advantage Holt didn't see. I wasn't just some kid with a laptop. I was someone who noticed patterns, systems, flaws. What he didn't know was that I'd arrived early and spent 20 minutes on the airport's public Wi-Fi. Not hacking, just observing. Anyone who understands networks knows airports are messy ecosystems. Public access points bleeding into staff systems devices, talking when they shouldn't. I'd noticed a few anomalies. A couple of secured devices pinging an external server at regular intervals. It wasn't my focus at the time, just a mental note. But sitting in that room, watching Holt drag things out, that note got louder. 10 minutes passed, then 15. I stood up, knocked again firmer. Holt sighed dramatically and walked over, leaned close to the glass. "You're making this worse for yourself," he said. I asked to call my mother. He laughed. Asked to speak to a supervisor. He said one was busy. Then he said something that crossed a line, something about me fitting a type. He thought no one else would hear. He was wrong. A nearby officer looked uncomfortable, turned away. That was my opening. Her name tag said Lena Brooks. Younger, nervous eyes darting between Holt and her screen. When Holt got called away briefly to deal with another lane, he left my phone sitting on the counter near her station. I walked to the glass and spoke quietly. Steady. I told her my name, my age, that I'd been held without explanation, that denying a phone call wasn't just wrong, it was illegal. I didn't threaten, I didn't beg, I just stated facts. Then I added one more. If this keeps going, I said, it's going to get a lot bigger than you think. She hesitated. You could see the conflict all over her face. Then, without looking at me, she slid my phone through the slot and whispered, "Make it quick." I didn't dial. I sent one message to a contact saved as MR. Just 3 words and a location code. It was enough. I powered the phone off and slid it back. Lena's hands were shaking when she put it down. I sat back and waited. This time waiting felt different. Less helpless, more deliberate. 5 minutes later, the temperature in the room changed. Not literally, but you know what I mean. 2 people in plain clothes walked in with the kind of confidence uniforms try to fake. Holt saw them and straightened up immediately. Smile snapping into place. He started explaining me, gesturing toward the room, clearly thinking he'd been vindicated. The woman listened for about 5 seconds before cutting him off. Actually, she said calm and sharp, "We're here about you." She flashed her badge. "Federal." Holt blinked, genuinely confused. He laughed, a short, nervous sound, and said there must be some mistake. That's when the man with her stepped forward and asked him to put his hands where they could see them. The room went silent. Passengers stopped moving. Phones came out. Holt's face drained of color in real time. They opened the glass door and told me I was free to go. Just like that. No apology from Holt. No explanation. I stepped out, grabbed my bag, my ID. Holt started talking fast, defending himself, saying he was just doing his job. The woman agent looked at him and said words I'll never forget. "Your job," she said, "is exactly why we're here." They didn't arrest him for how he treated me. That part surprised me. They arrested him for something bigger, something darker. He'd been using his position to create distractions while others moved through the checkpoint unnoticed. Human trafficking. That word landed heavy. My situation snapped into focus. I hadn't been the target. I'd been the cover. My humiliation, his little performance, all of it had been a smokescreen. As they cuffed him, Holt finally looked at me. Really looked. Not with superiority, not with mockery, but with fear. Pure, unfiltered fear. I didn't feel victorious. I felt hollow. The agents told me my message had confirmed what they'd been tracking for months, that the network anomalies I'd noticed were part of a bigger operation, that my accidental timing had blown it open. "You did good," one of them said. I nodded. I didn't know what else to do. They got me on a later flight, first class somehow. I sat there staring out the window, replaying the morning. The laugh, the glass room, the shift. I thought about how close it had been to going differently. How many times people like Holt get away with it because no one's watching the system, only the surface. When we landed, one of the agents met me again and apologized. Not formally, personally. She said sometimes justice takes ugly paths to get where it needs to go. I believed her. I still do. Here's the part that still bothers me, though. If Holt hadn't been greedy, if he hadn't enjoyed the power so much, if he'd just waved me through like 100 others, that operation might have gone on longer. People would have stayed invisible. Sometimes it's the petty cruelty that exposes the deeper rot. That's uncomfortable to admit. So, what do you think? Was it justice, or was it luck? Should I have stayed quiet, kept my head down, missed the flight, and moved on? Or was pushing back the only real option? Have you ever watched someone abuse power and wondered how far it really went? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Argue with each other if you want. These are the conversations we avoid, and that's exactly why they matter. If this story hit you, share it. Someone else might need to hear it.